Well, I've been told this is a lecture for students. However, some professors are participating, and I'm delighted to see that some colleagues from far away are here as well. For this heterogeneous audience, I did my best to find a middle ground between the diverse public and my own research interests. So I diminished the quantity of theory. However, besides wooden churches, I would discuss several concepts of media theory and new materialism. The presentation today will contain a bit of history, some theory or philosophy, where I will tackle issues of ontology and many images of wooden churches. Before changing the slide, I would like to tell you that the church in the poster is the wooden church of Urisiu de Jos, a village in East Transylvania. The picture was taken during the winter, and I hope you can see the snow. While uploading the photo, I just found out I took it almost 10 years ago on the 9th of January 2013, so in 3 days from now. Wooden churches are robust, but at the same time frail. Some of them are even strange, as you will see. Forgotten by humans, but full of life and lives, wooden churches have been built in villages up until the 18th century, when masonry materials became more accessible. Today, some young communities choose to build their own wooden churches or adopt older ones, as you will later see. The lecture is structured in 3 parts. In the first, I discuss context and history. In the middle part, with plenty of images, I will focus on 2 wooden churches, one from Transylvania and one from South Romania. In the last part, I will discuss the shift in perception of wooden heritage during the past decade. In this presentation, I would like to invite you to ask yourself the questions which have been bothering me since my first encounter with wooden churches. What kind of architecture is this? Where is it positioned between nature and culture? If we make a concession and agree with this dichotomy. And how did the attitude towards this heritage evolve? I hope to be able, together with you, architects and students soon to become architects yourselves, to look together beyond architecture and get a sense of the many entanglements of the life of wooden churches. I hope to portray today wooden churches as a cultural phenomenon and not solely as architecture. I must begin with a few words about Romania and its European context. I will later address religion because our topic today are churches. Romania is a country in Eastern Europe, a neighbor of Ukraine, of which you have heard about, the country at war with Russia. It also borders Bulgaria to the south, Hungary to the west, Serbia to the southwest, Moldova to the east, and the Black Sea to the southeast. It has a temperate continental climate with 4 seasons. With the map of Europe in front of our eyes, I would like to mention that Romania is not the only country with wooden churches. There are many in the north, in Norway or Sweden, also in Ukraine or Russia, in countries like Slovakia, or in the south in Serbia and Bosnia. However, there are different construction types. One distinguishing characteristic is the arrangement of the wooden logs in the walls. Specialists use 2 terms which come from German: Blockbau, when the logs are horizontal, which you could see in the church on the poster, Urisiu de Jos, and Stabbau, when the logs are vertical. In Romania, you can find Blockbau with few exceptions, especially parts of church, such as towers. Until the middle of the 19th century, the contemporary territory of Romania was divided in 3 provinces. Wallachia, printed in green in the south, Moldavia, orange, in the east, and Transylvania, light yellow, in the west, the latter belonging to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This information is important because most of the wooden churches which survived and are cultural heritage nowadays have been built before the unification of the first 2 provinces, Wallachia and Moldavia. Transylvania will join in 1918. Historically, these provinces developed at the crossroads of several empires: the before-mentioned Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman Empire, and later the Russian Empire. As you can imagine, the political situation is traceable in the aesthetics of arts and architecture. Most of the wooden churches are in South Romania and Transylvania, although they belong today to Romanian National Heritage List, so to the same country. The architecture differs and cannot be seen as a homogeneous ensemble. A wooden church is usually divided in three spaces: narthex, nave, and altar. The altar always points towards the east. Sometimes there is a porch on the western wall in front of the entrance. In the image you can see a few architectural plans. Some churches, especially the ones in North Transylvania, are high constructions with characteristic tall, slim bell towers at the western end of the building. Churches from South Romania are different, and if the tower exists, it is considered smaller. Today, I will focus less on architectural classification and more on another aspect, one which is as important as shape or architectural plan, and which is the materiality. I believe that architecture is not something only to be looked at or somewhere to develop human activities, but also something to experience through various senses. In order to offer you a better image of what I mean, I will tell you a short story. Last summer, your lecturer, Mrs. Asma Azmi, sent me some pictures of wooden churches in Malaysia and enthusiastically asked my opinion about them. As somebody affiliated to media theory, I cannot unsee the medium, which in this case was the photograph, which looked like a poster. You should know that for media theory, the message is the medium. In other words, if you send a letter to a media theorist, they will probably first analyze the envelope, the color, the format, the paper, the ink, the typewriter, the print, or, in the case of threat letters, the newspaper cuts. Only at the end they will read the text, the information delivered through the message. With the phone in my hand, I could see the texture of the wood of the Malaysian church, the reddish-black insulation, the ornaments, the people inside the church nave. I had enough visual information to elaborate an opinion, but I was blocked. I was missing something. The medium would only give me a deep feeling of frustration. No matter how much I zoomed in, I could not feel how the church smelled. I could get a feeling about the microclimate. The hues hinted to a rather high relative humidity. But how did the church smell? As someone who spent my share of time in wooden churches, I experienced that, no matter where the churches are, near the mountains, in the plain, in the village, or in the open-air museum in Bucharest, they have a similar smell, as if you've unpacked them from the same box. I was astonished that I could not process the visual information unless I could find out how does Asma's church smell, or unless I was inside them, where I could sense the relative humidity, temperature, and various smells. Image was not enough, and I gave up. This is, by the way, the abandoned altar of the Church of Boia in South Romania. As I have told you in the beginning, I focus on matter. Have you ever thought what matter is? Is it the inert, senseless thing? Which kind of relationship does it have with time? After years of search of a theoretical framework which fitted my practical experience in the field of restoration, I found, while I was recommended, the works of the philosopher and physicist Karen Barad. She considers, drawing from quantum field theory, that, I quote, "Matter is not mere stuff. It is not an inanimate givenness." She later adds, "Matter is substance in its iterative, interactive becoming, not a thing, but a doing. It is morphologically active, responsive, generative, articulate, and alive." End of quote. Anyhow, the matter is the thing that smells and not the shape, and this is the leitmotif of today. And by the way, damaged wood smells like vanilla. Just like books which contain cellulose, the damaged wooden fiber decomposes in several substances, and one of these substances is vanillin. Keeping matter in mind, I will begin the tour via photographs of the first wooden church. Now begins the part with many slides. This is the wooden church of Urș, which Asma mentioned before, in South Romania. Somebody wants to share content? Asma?
Sorry, where?
Decline or approve?
Who?
I have, well, okay. I think somebody clicked on something and wants to make notes on the presentation.
Okay. It's okay, just carry on.
Okay, I will.
Just ignore it.
Okay. This is the wooden church of Urș, as I told you. The picture was taken in 2011 during the long restoration. The altar vault collapsed in 2010, and the church was covered with this protective structure until it was completely restored. This is the nave. We are looking at the altar. The church was built at the end of the 18th century. Above the entrance, a date is carved in the wood, year 1757. The only certain information is the date the painters finished their work, 1843. The church is rather small, with a width of approximately 4.5 meters, a length of 10, and a maximum height at the interior of 4 meters. The Orthodox Church is the second largest Christian church, which was separated from the Catholic, as you surely know, in 1045. The historical event is called the Great Schism. This word comes from the Greek verb schizein, to split. I would like to point out that even the Orthodox Christian world is not homogeneous itself. I will come back later to that because the historical, political, and religious context impact art and architecture. I will begin the round trip of the church from the narthex. To the left, you can see the founder dressed in Western 19th century fashion, holding a handkerchief in his hand. To the right, the western wall and vault. These and the following photos were taken in summer 2012. One step further, and we are in the nave facing the altar. In front of us is the iconostasis, a wall full of icons, which are missing because these icons were being restored. The altar always points towards the east. If we turn around, we see the wall between narthex and nave and the entrance on the western wall. Wooden churches are covered by a barrel vault supported by wooden arches, which you can see in the image. The wooden planks are thinner than the logs used for the walls. The altar has a polygonal apse and a table in the middle. This is a very important spot in the church. Actually, only the priest is allowed to stand on the spot where the photograph was taken from. Women are banned from entering the altar. However, Orthodox Christians are very strict, but they also love exceptions. Therefore, they do allow sometimes women to enter altar without any purification ritual. As I promised, I will clear a few more facts about the religion. There are fundamental differences between Orthodox Christians. First of all, Orthodox churches are autocephalous, a Greek word. Auto, self, and kephalos, head. So they rule themselves by their own head, which means there is no pope universally recognized, but local/national bishops. Therefore, religion has a national taste, and its art as well. The Orthodox world, mostly East European, is divided in two groups following the main leaders, Russia and Constantinople. The tension between them is very intense, unless Catholics are around and they join hands. They call each other heretics and use different calendars. Romanians follow the Greek rite and celebrate Christmas on the 25th December. They have similar aesthetic characteristics in music and painting. Russians, together with Ukrainians, celebrate Christmas today, almost 2 weeks later, and generally gave up Celtic music and Byzantine painting style, becoming more Western. Regarding intercultural misconceptions, I must tell you that every year I receive messages from my German friends in Berlin wishing me Merry Christmas on days like today, on the 6th of January. From the same spot, we can see the southern wall, image left, and the prosthesis on the northern wall, image right. The prosthesis is an important space in the altar. It is usually a niche where the priest prepares part of the ritual. In Urș, the prosthesis is even more important because it contains the most information about the church. The date of the painting, 27th May 1845. Also the names of painters and founders. It is wonderful to see how architecture can be autoreferential. It does not use another medium, such as a written document, in order to document itself. We are once again outside in front of the church near the entrance on the western wall. You can see the wooden dovetail joints and also the carved decoration, the robe around the church. The marks on the surface of the wood are a special preparation procedure. The support is prepared to receive the fresco paint layer. Above the entrance and the porch is the tympanum, decorated in fresco technique. This architecture can be disassembled, and this quality might have been intentional. Local histories talk about churches being disassembled and sold to another village in order to make room for a new church, maybe of stone or brick. This feature of the wooden church, which can be unbuilt like IKEA furniture and moved somewhere else, has been used during the restoration project. Pieces of wood have been taken out and restored separately. The vault from the outside. As you can see, the wooden planks are fixed with wooden nails. The porch from above, with similar wooden nails. And here we are, in front of the church once again, facing the western wall and the wooden columns of the church. At this point, I would like to halt a bit the discussion about architecture and take a look at the mural painting. Urș is one of the many strange churches in South Romania. Strange because the mural painting, the fresco on the lime mortar, and the support, the wooden wall, are incompatible. One is rigid, the paint layer, and one is very flexible and oscillates in volume depending on external factors, as for example, the relative humidity. Fresco painting is a painting on fresh lime mortar combined with an aggregate. The aggregate used here is hemp. In this picture you can see a fresco fragment magnified under the microscope. Please note that this is not a fresco from Urș, but from a much newer painting from 2018. What happens is that the rigid painting detaches and falls apart, especially along the joints of the wooden logs. This is a microscope photography of the fresco of Urș. As you can see, a piece of hemp is binding the two tiny fragments. I call this churches strange because they are a material oxymoron, where two contradictory materials come together. One more thing. Those churches have been closed, and some of them forgotten by people who chose to build new ones made of bricks or stones. But they are not empty. In places like these, live creatures like these. This is another image taken from through the microscope. It's a living creature, a fungus, and an active one, or at least so it was in 2012. Or creatures like these. That's a bat hanging on a fresco. The second church I will present today is from southwest Transylvania, the wooden church of Sălciva. As you can see, it looks a bit different because it has a big tower. In order to be temporarily protected from rain, it has been covered with foil. The church was built around year 1799 on the top of a hill and was accessed through this path between two rows of fir trees. There was a local legend that the church was brought from another village on a raft on the nearby river. As you can see, the construction technique is block bow. The logs are placed horizontally. This is a view from the northern wall near the western entrance. This is an image of the altar apsis from the outside and the detail with the wooden joints, which have multiple functions to keep the logs in place as ornaments and as consoles. View from the southern wall, where you can see the tower with tin-covered roof. Inside the tower, you can see the juncture between the roof and the vault. Left image. This is an image from the west looking in the direction of the altar. In the image on the right, in the foreground is the vault with tempera painting, and in the background the roof. In 2011, the church was prepared to be disassembled and transported 600 kilometers to south in another Romanian town, somewhere near the Danube, where another parish decided to adopt it. At the top of the hill and at the end of the fir tree rows, there is no church anymore, but an empty space. This path from the picture, if it still exists today, is leading nowhere. Then the question comes, what are those churches if they are assembled and disassembled like IKEA furniture? What is architecture, or what can architecture be? Is it still architecture? Isn't architecture supposed to stand still? Is this immovable heritage or movable? Short note, the Romanian Institute for Heritage and the Romanian law uses a classification which divides the heritage between mobile and immobile or built heritage. It seems that wooden churches queer, troubled by questioning the classical concept of architecture. And Salciva is not the first church to be transported. Many wooden churches and houses made of wood have been brought in village museums, open-air museums in or near cities. Some, well, just one, have been even displayed inside of a classical museum in an exhibition room. Please look how the church walls stand around the white pillars supporting the museum's ceiling. This is an image from the Museum of the Romanian Peasant in Bucharest, and this photograph is from their website. I will leave a bit the mobile wooden churches and head out from the village into the city in order to top up the question regarding the mobility of architecture. But before I start, I would like to refer to a talk from Architecture and Design Lecture Series at your department, which was held in 2020 and entitled Traveling Architecture, a Love Affair. The speaker shared her experience while she traveled and studied architecture. But what happens if architecture itself is able to travel? In 1980, Bucharest was in the middle of the systematization program, a new urbanism project which meant to restructure the capital. The Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu did not like churches. Many were demolished, but several have been saved behind the curtain of apartment blocks along the new big avenues. A process, and I quote photographer Anton Roland Laub, as incredible as absurd. Laub's photographic project entitled Mobile Churches is about brick churches from Bucharest which have been transported in order not to be demolished. Some have been moved for a couple of meters, some other for a couple of hundreds of meters. The materials I'm showing are photographs displayed in various exhibitions and published in a book in 2017. It is a beautiful album with great photographs, a real image of Bucharest, and coming from an ex-inhabitant, you can almost feel the smell of the city through the pictures. The last slide of the mobile churches in Bucharest shows two pages from Laub's book, Two Churches Moved, one along a distance of 245 meters and another one of 78 meters. You can also see other parameters related to this transportation, like speed or duration and even rotation angle. Back to the wooden churches. Although some of the wooden churches in North Transylvania are classified as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, most of the wooden churches have been neglected, especially the ones in South Romania, Oltenia, a region with more than 200 wooden churches. Boia, the church in the image, the same one with the abandoned altar, is one of them. It is literally in the middle of the woods because the old village disappeared. However, I would argue that during the last decade an important change occurred. Society is more aware of the Romanian religious rural heritage. In 2010, the year the altar vault at Urș church collapsed, and 1 year before Sălciva was delivered to the new parish, Ovidiu Daneș, a Romanian art historian, writes in a conservation magazine about wooden churches. Please excuse me. I quote Daneș. Ignored by the village communities and deemed as minor patrimony by the government authorities, just a few wooden churches were preserved in their intact initial condition in terms of architecture, paintings, icon collection, furniture, ceremonial objects, etc. But they have actually vanished from our own awareness. End of quote. And he is right when he calls the wooden architecture minor patrimony, because the National List of Monuments, wooden churches are, with a few exceptions, categorized in Class B, so a secondary class. I also agree with his choice of words, vanished from our own awareness. Although I don't know who the we is, maybe many generations of Romanians, I have witnessed myself the blindness towards the wooden churches. Maybe they didn't smell nice enough. Whatever the reasons were, the wooden churches, with a too small capacity and lack of amenities such as electricity or heating, have been abandoned by their community. Echoing Daneș, another art historian, Luisa Zamora, criticizes the lack of scholarly interest in the Romanian wooden churches. I have selected an illustrative paragraph from her publication Lemn, Wood, from 2010, an album about wooden churches in South Romania. I quote from her introduction. Our research on wooden churches in North Oltenia began 3 years ago. For years, this topic has only aroused a marginal interest, maybe due to the insecurities brought about by our formation within the academic circles, that focus primarily on humanity's most important achievements, still haunt us for years. She goes on, up until now, the main subject of our research has been that which we call major history, which concerns monastery, palaces, kula houses with their founders, rulers, bishops, or dignitaries, as opposed to the more overshadowed minor history, which reflects in peasant households, wooden churches, and the micro-architecture of villages, as if the privilege of being major would not rely on the latter. End of quote. However, I argue that, after vanishing, the wooden churches start to re-emerge in our awareness. There is no doubt that the effort of scholars and NGOs fighting for rural heritage and revival of traditional crafts contributed to this change. They even managed to receive a European award for the restoration of the wooden church of Urș. Nonetheless, I think that the awareness was also risen via other means. I think that society had a change of spirit. As Zamora wrote, the important heritage had special characteristics. I argue that the policies of preserving and promoting heritage are related or dictated by various national identity discourses. Romania always put an effort into affirming its Europeanness, and prioritized, therefore, Western-like monuments, big masonry churches, which they called, for example, the 16th Chapel of Moldova, Note the Western reference. My theory is that the image of being European changed, and Romanians began to be more aware of ecology, civil society, health, nature, pure cotton, fair trade coffee, natural breastfeeding, and wooden churches. In other words, Romanians who entered the European Union in 2007 affirmed their Europeanness by being different, unique, and not by imitating anymore. At least so it seems. We could say that the wooden churches re-emerged in our awareness, but are they the same objects? Matter could be somehow saved by being musealized. However, conservation is not literally conserving. Preservation is in part also a change. Of course, a deliberate, human-generated change, the result of a negotiation between many factors, to name a few: identity discourse, already mentioned, politics, trends in preservation of cultural heritage, economy or society. This change becomes more visible in the case of the strange objects, such as the wooden churches with fresco mural paintings. Fresco and wood are technically incompatible, but not fully, not 100%. As I have told you earlier, the support is flexible and moves, while the painting is rigid and breaks. This is how these gaps occur in the painting. Researchers and conservators focus too much on either how to stabilize the painting and stop the decay, minimize the loss, or on questions like why did the old masters, craftsmen, and painters choose this technique? The wooden churches do not sit well with the classical concept of heritage preservation because it is too difficult to preserve them without losing their identity. Sustainable or not, these wall paintings exist, and they are numerous enough to be sure they were no accidents or experiments, and their existence speaks to us about the world. I would add here my heretic opinion that these gaps are part of the painting, to which they belong from the moment that the church has been painted in fresco. Maybe this particular kind of wooden churches challenges so much our concept of heritage preservation that this concept breaks. It also challenges the classic concept of matter, of inert, passive thing with no agency. This way, the manner we used to think and talk about objects crashes. Our classical conceptual framework does not work anymore. Analogously, the practice of heritage preservation is troubled as well. Our ontological concept of matter fails us because in wooden churches with fresco wall painting, matter is not stagnant, but always performing, changing, leaving, and its entanglements are visible, traceable, palpable, be they with human or non-human actors, such as animals or microorganisms, weather, pollution, tectonic movements, and so on. What is left is, maybe, to try to think matter, architecture, and preservation anew, try to perceive matter through all possible channels, to listen to it and develop a responsibility, an ability to respond. As Barad puts it, matter is condensations of responsibility. The last slide. We want to preserve matter and freeze the time. We want to display historical matter and show the public how other humans lived, prayed, or worked. We do not want to forget, we want to remember the times which we cannot access today. But what is the relationship between matter and time? Are the churches time capsules, or are they messages in the bottle recovered from the ocean of centuries? In order to share my opinion, let me borrow again philosopher Karen Borad's words, which are simply beautiful. Besides, who else should tell us about matter and time if not a physicist? Karen Borad. One of matter's most intimate doings is the materialization of time. Matter doesn't move in time. Matter doesn't evolve in time. Matter does time. Matter materializes and unfolds different temporalities. End of quote. However, just like children, matter is the thing which is easily spoken for and less heard. We should be careful every time we intervene on it. In the very end, I'd like to remind you of the idea of responsibility, the ability to respond, and not to hold a monologue, but the ability to hear, or maybe smell, who knows, the matter. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you still have some energy left for questions.
Okay, thank you for the interesting lecture. So now we have 15 minutes to half an hour for any questions or discussions. So who wants to be the first to ask? Hello?
Hi here. Can you hear my voice?
Is this Dr. Atta?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm curious.
Can you use the mic?
Using my mic.
It's not very loud.
Can it hear?
Okay, yeah, now we can hear. All right. Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So, okay. Thank you, Miss Elena. I'd like to ask about the heritage categories in Romania. They differentiate between the mobile and immobile heritage, I was told. I'm quite curious to know, is that specifically referring to only church types of heritage, or there are also other forms of mobile heritage in Romania that is worth to be considered as heritage?
So they don't necessarily differentiate regarding depending if an object is religious or not. We have immovable built heritage, and this could be a church, of course, but also a palace or a house. I don't know, a 19th century house, or or a bunker, or a prison. And you can have movable heritage, which could be archaeological findings, or paintings, or whatever objects which you can transport from one place to another. For example, you can take them and restore them in a workshop, whereas if you want to restore a building, you have to go there and do it in situ.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think this differentiation has to do with how this heritage is managed. Yes, I think it's a practical reason. But in the case of wooden churches, things are different.
Okay, are there any more questions from others? Do you also have an open air museum that shows?
Several. Yes, one in Bucharest. Well, I showed this Facebook pages of two open air museums. One in Sibiu, city which was cultural capital in 2007, I think, and one from South Romania. But I think the first one, the first open air museum, was in Bucharest.
Okay.
Where they gathered houses and some churches from all around Romania. So you have a map of Romania in micro scale. You can visit different regions inside the same park.
Because we have the Sarawak Cultural Village where they rebuilt the indigenous houses of different ethnic groups. But in Romania, your open air museum, are they like buildings built by real people and transported there? Or would they?
Yes. Dimitrie Gusti, an anthropologist, ethnologist from the beginning of the 20th century, he did field trips and bought, or I don't know, the most interesting houses. So they are real, authentic houses where people lived.
Okay, so they were disassembled and reassembled.
Yes.
Okay. Right. And there was a skansen. Have you heard of the skansen in Stockholm?
What was
It's also an open air museum where they show the traditional architecture of Swedish houses, and they also have reenactments every year. Like there are actors dressed up in traditional Swedish costumes, and they would act like it's 1800s. And also in our Sarawak Cultural Village, we have, I don't know, people in costumes acting out performances. I don't know if you have similar things.
Yes.
In that.
There are well, the Peasant Museum, the museum where I saw the church inside. This museum has a church as outside as well in their garden, and in the same garden they organize. Well, these are not authentic. Yeah, these events are organized by museums in order to hold alive the tradition. Also in the capital, you have traditional markets like Christmas market, but not the classical type. Or in the 1st of March, there's a beautiful celebration in Romania, beginning of spring, where people can buy beautiful small brooches, and they try to keep all the celebrations. In the village museum, of course, you have different festivities and people dress in national costumes. Yes, but unfortunately, these traditions they have been lost in villages.
Okay. We have a question. Sorry, we have a question from Cliff Burton, one of my students. He says, I was wondering how the wall of the previous church was constructed, because it seems like the timber of the wall was stacked on top of each other.
Yes,
so like in your picture,
you mean the picture you're seeing now?
Yeah.
Yeah, the very last picture. Yes, actually, well, I don't really know how they were constructed, but if you take them apart, you can exactly those logs lay one over the other, and yes, what should I say? Well, I didn't mention that some of the churches have a stone foundation, some do not have. But all of them have a very big log as a foundation, and then over this log come the other logs which build the walls, and they are joined in special joint techniques, and one of them is the dovetail technique. As you've seen also in Ursh, yeah, this one is dovetail because it looks like a dovetail, yeah, and it seems is one of a very efficient wooden joint, because you have to know this wood changes volume and shape, and it has to be kept in place very well in order to not to run away. So these wooden joints are strong enough to keep those heavy wooden logs in place, even if they change shape depending on relative humidity. I mean, humidity outside or water input and so on. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I hope so. Does it also prevent thermal breaks? Like, is it warm enough inside during winter?
Mhm. Well, I did this microclimate research for a year. The presentation was too long to put anything from that inside. Well, what I could see, I correlated the data I had from my data loggers, so from these devices which measured relative humidity and temperature. They correlated it with the data from the National Institute for Climate. So the variations during the day, so the microclimate inside was correlated with the climate outside, with the temperature outside and the relative humidity. So they are not the best insulation, but I think there is a balance there. They are somehow balanced, yes. There's a balance, I mean, between the inside and the outside.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know if the students or anyone else have any more questions. Yeah, Cliff says, all right, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Are there new churches built out of timber now?
Excuse me?
Sorry. Are there any new churches
Yes.
using timber
Yes.
nowadays?
Yes. Well, I visited one this summer in North Romania. It is near a big town, Suceava. I don't remember the name of the parish, but I was accidentally there and I just checked it out. So there still are some craftsmen who know how to work with wood and to build these houses, but not everywhere in the country. And that's a question. Is it okay to, for example, restore heritage from South Romania, where they had a special technique using craftsmen from North Romania with another tradition? Well, it's not very different, but there are differences. But yes, they still build wooden churches sometimes. And this, yes, this is the situation of the Church of Salciva, which was disassembled and transported in 6 trucks for this long distance to another town, to another parish. And to correlate your last questions about isolation, how the microclimate inside the church. Well, actually, the new church was much more comfortable inside. So maybe there are some adjustments regarding the temperature inside the new church.
So are there any more questions from the audience?
Maybe students. I'm so curious what students have to say.
Oh, Joshua. Hi, Joshua. I don't know if he wants to turn on the camera. Okay. He asked, how are the maintenance process of the churches? For example, the material used for the maintenance?
The maintenance.
Yeah, he asked about the maintenance process.
Well, maintenance after restoration, but because, well, I showed you churches which have been abandoned, so there was no maintenance there. They didn't even cut the grass around the church. They're like in the jungle. Maintenance after restoration or before?
Well, I'm not sure what he means. Okay.
Well, actually, what an important thing, it seems that microclimate is very important in preserving the wood. So if you if you find a way to avoid big variations in especially relative humidity, you can stabilize and avoid a lot of trouble. This is one important thing. And of course, watch the traffic inside the church, because, for example, a lot of painting gets lost because people, I don't know, move around and they hit it and it falls.
I'm interested in the process of how the churches got abandoned. Is it because the society around it? Is it because they eventually moved to the cities to find work and then there were less and less population? Or
I think I don't really know the reasons, but I think they are very interesting and very complex. Well, first of all, housing changed, and so did churches. These churches don't have electricity; they are not connected at all to electricity, and they were also too small for the communities. At the same time, Romania had 50 years of communism, where churches were not agreed at all. But the communists cherished the image of the Romanian peasant, because it opposed to this bourgeoisie. So the reason why these churches were abandoned is, of course, because the peasants were moved to the city to become workers. This happened in communism as well. Also because they weren't satisfying enough for the communities. Also because practicing religion wasn't agreed in during communism. I think there are many reasons why these churches disappeared, and also I also think it has to do with the communism. The communist regime fell in 1989, and we have more than 30 years since then. What happened in this time? I think it has to do with this image of being European, this national identity discourse. Romanians wanted to present themselves with big monuments, with like Gothic looking cathedrals, and they did not see the value, I think, of the wooden churches, only as a small minor heritage. They appreciate it till now as minor heritage. And then I think in 2010 something happened. Well, then I was away, and then now coming back to Bucharest, I see people are more aware of wooden churches.
but during communism, did people, because you're Orthodox Christians, did they practice their religion secretly, or did they maintain?
No, they were going to church, but how should I describe it? But it also depended of what kind of intellectual activities you had, and if they were suspicious of you, that you're against the party, for example. But usually older people could go to church, and I think, yeah, people could go to church. But most of the population was not religion, at least on the surface. It might be that people have led this double life. There's a lot of literature about that. That during totalitarian systems, people try to keep their own beliefs and live a double life. So the churches were not abandoned because communism forbid religion.
Okay. Are there any more questions from the audience?
I have a question here, Doc.
Okay.
By looking at the structure of the church and also the finishes of the timber church, it seems that the craftsmanship is a bit crude. I do not know if we compare with the late 16th century or early 17th century, the blacks in America, when they built their shelter, it is almost similar to this. I don't know when was this church constructed and why the craftsmanship is not refined within a certain period of time in terms of timber construction. You see? Even in Malaysia, if you look at the timber construction, the specializations of the craftsmanship is very minute in details, and the transitions of the work is a bit refined. I don't know, what is your observation?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for your observation. That's a great question. I'm asking myself the same thing. Well, yes, and I like the word crude which you use. I think it fits well to the wooden churches in Romania. I don't know why, because they knew the material very well. They knew how to cut the wood, how to put it, how to choose it, which kind of wood to use. Why didn't they refine the church, the finishing? I think Transylvanian churches are a bit more elaborated. Transylvania, the province, which was long time part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But in South Romania, they are rough like this. And this church, I'm not sure when it was. It is in a village in Romania, Dămțeni. There's also very little information when this church were built. There's more information about when they were painted. This one must be from the beginning of the 18th century, or maybe beginning of the 19th, end of the 18th century, somewhere there. I cannot answer the question, but I'd like to research further on this. Maybe it has to do with, I don't know, the local spirit.
Okay, maybe.
They were happy with this presentation, maybe. And also, in the case of the wooden churches with fresco wall paintings, you have to think they were fully covered with fresco painting. So an unfinished and rough surface was very good for the painters. They even hit it with an axe so that the wall painting sticks better to the wood. And at the end, well, now the painting is so gappy, it's full of holes. But at the beginning, the church was fully covered in a mortar layer. And some art historians, they asked themselves if these people didn't have enough money to build a masonry church, and they tried to fake it by painting it in fresco.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe that's a reason why churches in South Romania are so rough.
Yeah. Because I was comparing with the recorded history of the Malaysian architecture. If we can recall back since the arrival of the Portuguese in 1511, and then from the 1511 itself, we had seen the palace, the Malay palace, were built with a very nice articulate floral band light and also floral eave on the roof and so on. That is my observation.
So you were thinking of a palace. Well, these are rural churches, so there are only villagers who built it. Maybe I'm thinking now a reason is they didn't have enough finances to finish to refine the church.
What I have in mind is the transfer of technology, you know. The transfer of technology from the palace, they apply the technology of wood carving, woodwork, woodcraft into their own commoner's house, as well as the boat. I hope one day you come to Malaysia, you see the boat in Kelantan, the boat in Terengganu, even the boat are carved nicely by the fishermen. It shows the transfer of technology in the woodwork. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I will dig deeper into it. I'm curious as well. If there is any connection to, well, we should firstly establish if there were any points of contact between noble people or rulers and these villages. If they didn't live separate worlds, that would be maybe the first thing to research.
But this dovetail technique, where does it come from? This is it also common in other parts of Europe? The techniques that.
Yes, I think yes, and it is still used nowadays. It is good because it is very efficient because this margin is broader, and if the wood cannot get out like this because it sticks in place.
But in one of your slides, you showed the roofs, the joints up there.
Yes. Here? Oh no,
no.
this one.
Yeah.
This one. Yes.
No, was it the one? Yeah, the church in the main on the front slide. Yeah, on the top. Well, I don't know if maybe it was
This one.
Oh yeah. No, I thought that was the joint, the corners there.
Well, this is also Transylvania.
Transylvania, yeah.
By the Romanian community. Transylvania is inhabited and was inhabited by different ethnic groups, Hungarians, Germans. So there was a lot of intercultural exchange. So maybe there is some transfer of technology. There's for sure transfer of technology in Transylvania. I dealt with it a bit during my master's research between communities.
Yeah, I thought this was fine woodwork. I wouldn't call this architecture crude, like the joints. Yeah.
It's very interesting to listen to opinions from the outside. I'm very happy, and outside of Europe, that's very, very interesting to see this architecture from another point of view.
Might be, Elena. I traveled to Indonesia and I traveled to Thailand and I traveled to some Asian countries because our knowledge of wood might be more closer in terms of the applications of the technique of wood technology. I guess that is one of the reasons. because the wood in Malaysia, we can use it raw in the construction. And then sometimes the wood, the timber itself, we can saw it into pieces in terms of planks and so on. And maybe that is the only materials that we have. That is why we can refine it. Like in your country, maybe masonry, limestones, a lot of other materials that you can use for the buildings. Then they use the wood more straight like this. If you go to Thailand, you'll see the articulate works of the buildings, and you go to Indonesia, the most prominent one is the Batak house, the native Batak house. It's a very, very, to me, it's a very fine architecture. That is the transfer of technology is that interests me so much.
Yeah.
I wonder, the space between the roof and the walls, is
Yes.
there any insulation? It looks like there's a gap there.
There's a gap, yeah.
Yeah, I bet it's very cold.
Here?
Cold air coming. It looks very
Yes. Well, actually, this was during the summer, and it was very hot, actually.
okay.
This is why there was a big problem with Salchiva. The temperatures were so high, and the microclimate varied so quickly, so that it almost rained with paintings from the ceiling. So we had to stabilize the painting very quickly. Can you hear me?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. These are all students. Okay.
Let's make the test with the slides. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try share the slides. Yeah.
All right.
And you tell me if it's okay. Share. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, and then yeah, like this.
Great.
Yeah. Good.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. Just
I have to take attendance because I asked the students to attend. So I'm gonna share. Well, what am I gonna share?
Okay. Yeah. Attendance.
Wait. Okay, great. Okay, this is for the history students. I don't know if any history students are here. Yeah, the history students. Sorry, I'll just
Yeah.
mute my phone.
But what if they come later?
Then they'll just give me, let me know in the chat their
Okay.
matrix number and their names.
Okay.
Well, we're not really known for punctuality around here, so we're not very German around here.
No problem.
No, I'm just being honest.
I think more than half of the world is not punctual. 3/4
Yes.
maybe.
Okay, guys. This is history, okay? Let me see who are the participants. There's Barry, there's Fadu. Who is Jude? Okay.